There's someone we all know, that friend who always cancels. I'm tired today, maybe another day, and after a few times you stop asking. You start wondering if it's you, if they just don't want to see you. But here's the thing, what's happening inside them is almost never what it looks like from outside. Most of the time, they're not avoiding you, they're protecting something that matters to them. Their energy, their mental state, their space to breathe. Because if you're the kind of person who genuinely prefers a Friday night at home over going anywhere, today's video is going to describe you better than most people do. Today, we're exploring the psychology of people who prefer to stay home. The one society tends to call boring, antisocial, withdrawn, but that psychology reads very differently. First thing to understand, not everyone recovers energy the same way. Extroverts recharge through social contact, interaction, conversation, movement. All of that activates their system. For introverts, it's the opposite. Every social interaction, even a pleasant one, slowly drains the battery, and then they need something very specific to restore it. Silence, calm, mental space, no noise from outside, no social demands, just the ability to exist without performing for anyone else's expectations. And for most introverts, there's exactly one place where all of that consistently happens: home. Which means that for them, staying in isn't about boredom at all. It's literally about plugging back into the charger, recovering what social interaction consumed, resetting the system before the next demand arrives. Psychology has a name for this framework: the optimal level of stimulation theory. And it says something genuinely interesting about why people are built so differently. Every person has a baseline stimulation threshold, the amount of external input their nervous system is comfortable processing without becoming overwhelmed or depleted. Some people need very high stimulation to feel okay. Noise, movement, people, events. Without that input, they feel stagnant and under-alive. Others need very little. Too much stimulation becomes genuinely uncomfortable, even painful, in a way that's difficult to explain to someone who doesn't experience it. When you consistently receive stimulation above your threshold, your nervous system pays a cost, and that cost accumulates. The need to be alone isn't optional, it's biological. But here's what often gets missed. Preferring to be home isn't just about recovering from interaction. It's very often about something deeper: control. Because outside, the world is unpredictable. Noise you didn't choose, plans that change last minute, conversations that go shallow, social dynamics that shift without warning. But at home, everything is different. You control the temperature, the soundtrack, the lighting, the pace, even the rhythm of the afternoon itself if you want. For people with anxiety, for sensitive people, for anyone whose nervous system runs at high sensitivity, that control isn't a luxury. It's the difference between functioning and barely coping. It's the only environment where the body is not managing external inputs constantly, where the brain can genuinely unwind instead of just surviving until it can unwind. And here's something that almost never gets discussed publicly. Research consistently shows that people who enjoy and seek solitude tend toward higher creativity and stronger problem-solving capacity. Because when there's no constant external noise, the mind does something interesting. It starts making connections on its own, quietly, between things that seemed unrelated. The best ideas rarely appear in a bar or at a crowded event. They appear in the sofa silence, on a solo walk in the shower at noon, when nobody is watching. In moments where the brain isn't busy managing social performance, it can finally start actually thinking. And that makes solitude a genuinely productive state, not an empty one. But now something important. Not everyone who stays home is doing it for the same reason. Two people can have identical behavior and completely different psychological realities underneath. For some people, staying home is a genuine source of peace and restoration. It's where they feel most themselves, most present, most connected to what actually matters to them. For others, staying home is avoidance, a way of not engaging with anxiety that feels too uncomfortable to face. Not a choice, but a retreat from an overwhelming world. And the difference matters enormously, because one is a healthy form of self-knowledge. The other is a protective pattern that gradually closes the world down. There's one question that helps separate them. Do you stay home because it genuinely makes you feel good, or because going out has started to feel unbearable? One of those is tranquility, the other is avoidance. And if you're honest with yourself, you probably already know which one describes you most of the time. Psychologists call the healthy version a preference for low stimulation, and people with this trait tend to share some specific characteristics that research has documented. They find genuine pleasure in small rituals: the coffee in the morning, the light coming through the window at a specific hour, the sound of rain on a quiet afternoon, the book that's been waiting, the project nobody else knows about. The unbothered Saturday that unfolds exactly how you imagined without a single interruption. They're not looking for drama, not looking for spectacle. Their version of enjoyment doesn't require an audience or a crowd or a memorable story to tell later. They also tend to have a very rich inner world. Their thoughts, their ideas, their imagination. There's already a lot happening inside, which makes the outside feel less necessary. While other people feel empty without external entertainment, their internal life is already interesting enough, full enough, engaging enough without external input, feeding it constantly. This is also closely linked to what psychology calls sensory processing sensitivity, the trait of noticing and deeply processing what others filter out. People high in this trait pick up more from their environment, more emotional information, more sensory input, more subtle social signals than average people ever detect. Which means being around people is genuinely more taxing, not because they dislike people, but because they're processing at a higher volume simultaneously. And learning that about yourself, really understanding it, changes how you relate to your own need for solitude. It becomes information instead of something to be ashamed of. So if you're the person who loves a Friday alone and doesn't feel guilty about it, nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken or antisocial or stuck. You're someone who has learned at least one genuinely important thing: what your nervous system actually needs and how to give it. That's rarer than it sounds. Now I'm curious, what does your ideal weekend look like? Full social schedule or total solitude? Or somewhere in between? And if you stayed home last weekend with exactly zero regrets about it, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments below what your perfect quiet day actually looks like. Because there's something quietly fascinating about people who prefer to stay in. And once you understand the real psychology underneath it, a lot of other things start making sense. In the next video, we're going to look at something connected to this: the psychology of people who don't care about their birthday. Why some people genuinely don't need it to mean anything. And that is a quietly radical position in a world that simultaneously monetizes your attention and your anxiety about missing out. Choosing your own rhythm, making peace with a smaller social footprint, finding depth that fast and noisy environments never produce. Those are real choices. Make them on purpose.